A young, single mother and her baby had been wandering for a long time, caught in the pouring rain and harsh wind, with nowhere to rest or call home. Their situation was dire. The mother's hope of finding work was fading because she had a baby to care for, making it difficult for anyone to hire her. Every day was a struggle to survive, to find a shelter, even for a single night, and to find money to buy milk for her child. She was desperate, willing to do any kind of work, but the presence of the baby left her isolated in a world that had no mercy for her circumstances. Alongside the road, they lay helpless, the baby sleeping next to her on the wet street. The rain grew heavier, thunder echoed in the sky. At that moment, someone nearby noticed them. A kind stranger, someone who had a home nearby, saw the vulnerable pair and decided to act. Without hesitation, the stranger approached the mother, offering an invitation to come inside for water and rest. The mother hesitated, worried she would trouble the stranger's family with her sudden intrusion, fearing she was imposing too much. Yet the stranger reassured her, urging her to come in and escape the dangerous weather. The gentle voice spoke calmly, breaking the fear that held the mother's heart. They walked together to the stranger's house. The mother's steps were slow, weighed down by exhaustion, but the stranger carried the baby briefly, sharing the burden. Inside, the house was warm and spacious, a comforting shelter from the wild storm outside. The stranger went to prepare water while the mother settled with the baby, feeling the first safety in days. The fear of rain and cold wind began to fade, replaced by a fragile sense of hope. The stranger spoke of an abandoned shack up on a hill, a place no one lived in anymore, with water and enough space for the mother and her child. The shack was rarely used, and the stranger offered it as a temporary home, a safe place to sleep and protect the baby from the harsh world. The mother was still hesitant, but the kindness in the stranger's eyes was unwavering. They encouraged her to not be shy, to use the shack as long as she needed until she could find a more permanent place. The mother gratefully accepted, relieved beyond words. She began to clean the shack together with the stranger's support, making the place livable despite its years of neglect. The shack was simple and far from comfort, but it was shelter, a new beginning. The stranger promised help whenever needed, a rare gift of kindness in a world that had been so unkind to the mother and her baby. The baby slept peacefully in the new shelter, no longer cold or alone. The mother cleaned and prepared their small new home, feeling the weight of uncertainty still on her shoulders, but softened by the support she received. The stranger's promise to come help when needed filled her with cautious optimism. The story unfolded quietly, with the small acts of care and shelter giving a mother and child the chance to start over, in a place where the sky might be clearer and the days gentler. The small shack on the hill was no longer just an abandoned structure, but a symbol of hope and human kindness, a stepping stone from desperation towards survival and dignity. The mother and her child were no longer wandering in the rain. They had a place to call temporary home, a place protected from the elements, supported by an unexpected friend. A faint light flickered in the hills as the young mother and her baby settled into the modest shack that had been offered to them. The abandoned shelter, far from the warmth and luxury of a home, was their new reality, a place where they could rest, but also a symbol of the arduous road ahead. The mother, still fragile from days of wandering and uncertainty, now carried the weight of responsibility heavier than ever before. She was alone, with only her child depending on her for survival, clinging to the hope that this temporary refuge would be a turning point rather than an end. Her life as a single mother in Vietnam was a tale that echoed the struggles of many women in similar circumstances. The first and most pressing challenge was always financial. Raising a child required continuous, exhausting labor to earn enough money for the basics: milk, diapers, clothing, and medicines. Every jong had to be stretched, every penny accounted for. Without a partner to help or steady support from family, she became the sole provider and caregiver. The relentless pressure to find work clashed painfully with the demands of nurturing a young baby who could not be left alone. At times, she could hear the whispers of society's judgments, harsh and unforgiving. To be a single mother in many parts of Vietnam meant more than just survived hardship. It meant being vulnerable to social stigma, to quiet condemnation from neighbors and relatives, who might see her situation as a failure or a sign of weakness. These silent burdens weighed heavily on her spirit, already fragile from the daily battles of survival. Her days became a delicate balancing act. When the baby was asleep, she would wash clothes in cold water, prepare simple meals, and anxiously ponder how she would afford the next meal or the next month's rent. The shack was small and crude, but it was a home now, and every corner spoke of resilience and fragile hope. She learned to accept the kindness of neighbors and the occasional help from strangers, guarding her pride but aware that accepting help was sometimes the difference between survival and despair. Loneliness gnawed at her during the long nights. The baby's soft breathing was a bittersweet reminder of both joy and responsibility. She was the sole anchor in a world that sometimes felt icy and indifferent. The absence of a father figure was not just about financial support. It was the absence of emotional support, guidance, and relief. No one shared the weight of worry about the baby's future, the uncertainty of when the next job would come, or the fear of illness and hardship. Despite all, she refused to surrender to despair. Education was a dream she held fiercely, not just for herself, but for her child. She imagined a future where the baby would grow up secure, nurtured, with opportunities she never had. This stubborn hope pushed her to keep walking forward, even on the days her body ached and her spirit faltered. She sought out small jobs, worked long hours in nearby farms or markets, often under the scorching sun or in the cold rain. There was no room for rest or indulgence. The shack itself symbolized more than shelter. It represented a stepping stone toward rebuilding a life that society often judged too harshly. It was a breathing space, a chance to breathe and gather strength. With each small task, cleaning the space, preparing a simple bed, feeding the baby with what little she had, she reclaimed a sense of purpose and dignity. Her interactions with the stranger who had offered the shack became a lifeline of support, reminding her that kindness could still exist in hardship. The promise of assistance when needed, the offer to help clean or bring necessities, slowly nurtured a fragile trust. It was a subtle but powerful reminder that no one truly had to face adversity alone, even when the world seemed coldest. Underneath the surface of this story were the unspoken truths shared by many single mothers in Vietnam. The financial strain was just one facet of their struggle. They wrestled with societal expectations and the crushing isolation that often accompanies single parenthood. They juggled the need to earn with the need to nurture, often sacrificing their own well-being for their children's future. The story of this young mother was not just about hardship, but about strength, resilience, and an unyielding hope to create a better life from the fragments of a broken past. It was a quiet tribute to the countless women who face similar battles every day, silently rebuilding their lives, one small step at a time. This continuation deeply explores the emotional and practical hardships of a single mother struggling in harsh economic and social conditions, resonating with many real stories in Vietnam. It captures both the external challenges and the internal resilience that defines the journey of such women. If needed, further parts can explore more specific day-to-day scenarios, relationships, and hopes for the future in a similarly detailed and empathetic manner. The continuation of the story traces the young single mother's journey, from desperate wandering to fragile refuge, reflecting the profound challenges faced by many single mothers in Vietnam. After arriving at the modest, abandoned shack offered by a kind stranger, the mother felt a mix of relief and intense responsibility. The shack was far from comfortable, but it represented safety and a place to catch her breath in a harsh world where she was alone with her baby. Financial hardship was her constant companion. Every morning brought the relentless pressure to find work and earn enough to cover essentials like milk, diapers, and medicine. Without a partner or dependable family support, she bore the entire burden of caregiving and earning. The harsh reality of her situation was compounded by societal judgment. In many communities, single motherhood carried stigma and silent condemnation, turning everyday survival into an emotional struggle against loneliness and social exclusion. Her days were long and exhausting. Whenever her baby slept, she seized moments to wash clothes by hand, prepare simple meals, and nervously plan how to pay rent or buy food. The small shack symbolized more than shelter. It was a lifeline, a foundation for dignity and hope. Small acts like cleaning up the space or feeding her child became testimonies of resilience amid hardship. Occasional kindnesses from neighbors and strangers helped keep despair at bay, but pride and self-reliance were essential shields against the isolation. Loneliness often crept in during quiet nights, the baby's breath a bittersweet reminder of both joy and sole responsibility. The absence of a father figure was not just financial, but emotional, leaving her without relief or shared burdens. Yet she held on fiercely to her dream, to give her child a future filled with security and opportunity she had never known. This hope drove her to labor tirelessly, working in fields or markets regardless of sun or rain, sacrificing rest and comfort for her child's well-being. The abandoned shack was more than a physical refuge. It was a symbol of new beginnings amid shattered pasts. Growing trust and support from the stranger who offered the shelter nurtured her strength. This quiet compassion showed her that even in hardship, she did not have to face life alone. Her story mirrors countless Vietnamese single mothers, balancing financial strain, societal pressure, and emotional solitude with unwavering determination. Her journey was not only about survival, but about courage, resilience, and the stubborn hope to rebuild from ruins. It honored the silent strength of women facing adversity alone, crafting better lives step by step. This deep, detailed narrative captures both the external trials and the internal courage defining her path, and the paths of many like her. The young mother's life in the small shack settled into a quiet rhythm, shadowed by the immense challenges that lay ahead. The shelter provided by a stranger was a lifeline, but it was far from the solution to the hardships she and her baby faced daily. The reality of being a single mother in Vietnam cast long shadows over her every move, each day unfolding with new trials and unyielding burdens. Her story echoed the often unseen resilience of countless women in similar positions. Raising a child alone was a relentless journey of sacrifice and perseverance. Every sunrise brought with it the pressing weight of financial necessity. Basic needs, milk, food, diapers, healthcare, were constant expenses that loomed large. The mother often found herself calculating expenses down to the last jong, rationing care with a mother's precision born of desperation. The challenge of securing steady income while caring for her infant was a balancing act with no margin for error. Jobs that could accommodate her needs were scarce. Employers were often hesitant to hire a woman tethered to parenting responsibilities, and the stigma of single motherhood added an invisible barrier. The shack was modest, its walls thin and worn by time, but it became a sanctuary where she could nurture her child away from the harsh elements and prying eyes of judgment. Life in such a place demanded constant vigilance and hard work. Cleaning the space, gathering water, preparing food with limited resources became daily rituals of survival. The mother learned to adapt, to find strength in small victories, like the baby's peaceful sleep or a meal successfully cooked. These moments provided fragile but vital hope. Loneliness bore down with crushing intensity. The absence of a partner was not merely a financial gap, but a void of emotional intimacy, support, and shared burdens. Nights were long and often sleepless, spent watching over the baby's fragile health. The mother wrestled with fears of sickness and injury, compounded by scarce access to medical care. Her world narrowed to the immediate needs of the child, each moment underlined by an overwhelming sense of responsibility. Societal expectations in her community weighed heavily. Single mothers often encountered silent scorn, subtle exclusion, or outright discrimination. The mother experienced moments of biting isolation, where neighbors' eyes and whispered comments felt like additional wounds. The cultural pressure to conform to traditional family structures was a constant reminder of her outsider status. Yet beneath society's judgment was an undeniable human story of love and tenacity, a story too often overlooked. Time was a scarce commodity. The mother juggled endless tasks, securing work, caring for her child, managing the household, while carving out minute spaces for rest. She sacrificed personal health and comfort to provide for her baby's well-being, working odd jobs, selling small goods, or performing labor-intensive tasks. Each hour was precious, but countless demands made it insufficient. Her dream of a better education and future for her child fueled her unyielding resolve. The community around her was both a challenge and an occasional source of support. Kind neighbors offered small kindnesses, food, advice, temporary help, but the stigma surrounding single motherhood limited the depth of this assistance. The mother carefully guarded her dignity, accepting aid but unwilling to impose. The stranger who offered her the shack became a rare beacon of unconditional kindness. This relationship underscored the possibility for compassion amid hardship. As days turned to weeks, the mother's determination hardened like tempered steel. She navigated her struggles without losing sight of the future she sought for her child. Education mattered deeply, a chance for the child to break the cycle of poverty and stigma. The mother invested what she could in early learning and nutrition, despite scarce means. She sacrificed sleep and comfort to ensure the child's development and health. Yet the emotional toll was profound. The mother often wrestled with guilt and fear, whether she could provide enough, keep her child safe, or shield them from societal judgment. The burden of carrying so many roles alone sometimes brought moments of despair. Yet hope flickered in quiet moments, a smile from the child, a neighbor's support, a small success. These sparks fueled her resilience. Her story is a testament to the strength and endurance of single mothers in Vietnam. It shines light on the complexities of their lives, the financial struggles, social isolation, emotional battles, and steadfast love. It reveals a world where survival is intertwined with hope, and where everyday courage is a quiet act of heroism. The shack on the hill became more than a temporary shelter. It was a symbol of a new beginning, lifted by human kindness and the mother's unwavering resolve. Against the backdrop of a society that could be unforgiving, the mother carved out a space for dignity, hope, and love. Her journey, though solitary, was marked by the enduring spirit to nurture and protect, to fight for a better future for her child no matter the odds. This story honors the silent courage of countless women who live unseen battles, enduring hardships with grace and determination, forging paths toward hope and survival.